Welcome to the App Advisory Show, your fortnightly dose of all things cloud accounting, apps, and app advisory.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the App Advisory Show. I've got a long-time companion friend who I've known around this world for a number of years, Tony Stevenson of FreeAgent. Morning, Tony.
Morning, Matt. How are we doing, mate?
I'm good. So I think we probably first crossed paths in about 2015, I'm going to guess, which is like 7 odd years now.
Yeah, I remember it well. We bumped into each other and had a bit of a conflab at a Xero con. And then I can actually remember sitting on my sofa in a flat that I used to live in, having a conversation with you on the phone after that initial meeting. And it must have been about 2015, might possibly pushed into 2016, but yeah, around that time.
Yeah, so time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
Does, right?
So Tony, tell us a bit about yourself and a little bit about FreeAgent, but yeah, I think you've got like quite an interesting background in terms of how you got to where you're at. So I think it's interesting for people to hear that.
Indeed, I'm not unique, but I'm a slightly unusual combination of experiences in the past. So I started life as an accountant. I didn't start life as an accountant. I started my professional life as an accountant. So I trained with the Big Four. Kind of fell into it really, and sort of worked out from fairly early on that it perhaps wasn't quite what aligned with my natural skill set, shall we say. So I did 4 years with Deloitte, went and worked in industry for a couple of years, working for BlackBerry back when everybody realized they needed a smartphone. So it was actually quite a cool place to be. I always remember sitting there with he's actually a partner at EY now, but he was the sort of head of tax at the time, telling us that Apple was quite happy to kind of keep playing with the personal market, and they'd never succeed in business, and that Google and HTC were nothings, and they were going to disappear off, and Android was a nothing. So that was I always remember that conversation. It was my first week there, which obviously didn't play out to be quite accurate now. Couple of the years there in industry, that was quite good fun. I went back into practice, and I was in practice for 3 years in a smaller firm, again tax focused. I kind of split my time between just sort of standard corporation tax reviews and then sort of building out a service line in a kind of niche area of hospitality accounting around helping restaurants manage their tips, which was quite entrepreneurial and quite good fun. Still keep in touch with the guy Peter Davis that I worked with there, a good friend. I eventually managed to sort of worm my way out of practice day to day, and in 2014 joined Xero, which is where Matt and I kind of crossed paths.
Yeah,
I was there for a couple of years in the implementation team, which was really good fun. I really enjoyed it. It's the first place I'd really enjoyed going to work. Left with a heavy heart, but not that heavy because I went traveling for a year. And then I had a couple of shorter stints at software houses which didn't quite work out, and I've been at FreeAgent now for about 4 years. I have done 3 different roles at FreeAgent. So I started in a sales role, which I did for about 1.5 years, which I had fairly mixed success at. I don't think sales naturally quite aligns with my personality. And then I went back into implementation for a couple of years, which does far more align with where I kind of put myself at my best. I've just started a new role. I say I've just started. I've just formally been given a new job title, although I've been doing this role for probably 6 months or so. So I'm now the Digital Enablement Manager at FreeAgent, which kind of means that I'm still involved in the training, but it will be probably on a slightly reduced basis to what it has been previously. But I'm a lot more involved now in doing a lot more of the kind of webinars and thought leadership, and then sort of exploring partnerships and integrations as well. So there's quite a lot kind of going on at the moment at FreeAgent, and a slightly unusual set of skills: sales, implementation, practice. So that's what kind of led me here.
And I suppose it is like an interesting route to where you've got to. But I think I'm just thinking about you've been at FreeAgent 4 years now, and we'll touch on FreeAgent as well shortly about the solution, how that's evolved. But it must have been weird if you're doing like enablement and even sales at the early part. You'll be doing that pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and now you got post-pandemic. So even like enablement is must be a different beast now to maybe what it was if you're looking back at 2014 when you were doing implementation, stuff like that. How have you found that different, or what's been the difficulties or the improvements in working that way?
That's a really good question, actually. So historically, the kind of industry expectation, and this is not just a free agent thing, was that, you know, as an implementer, we'd be out on the road a lot, which after a while, you know what it's like, mate. You know, it can become a little tiresome being out on the road all the time and not sleeping in your own bed and stuff. It was never that bad at FreeAgent. It was a lot more local than it had been when I was at Xero, where I kind of covered the whole country along with the other guys and girls in the team. There was a real sort of reluctance to use Zoom from both ends. I didn't really like using it because I didn't feel very effective over Zoom, and the end, you know, the people who I was training, the partners and the practices kind of didn't really like using it either. It was not uncommon for me to get an email 10 minutes before the session saying, "What's Zoom? How do I log in?" Like, I've suddenly realized that there's a problem here because I don't know how I'm going to be able to see what you're doing and stuff like that. And that happened a number of times. I had one lady who just completely ignored it in entirety, and I called her up and she was like, "Yeah, I'm just sat here waiting for you to call me, because the last time I did this 5 years ago with somebody, he just called me and we just sort of like, he just described where the cursor was on the screen," sort of thing, which was an interesting session. What I think I found was that we've realized that it is very, very possible to be highly effective remotely. And that is a combination of both people at both ends. So I'm now a lot better at delivering over Zoom. I've refined my techniques. I understand better what works and what doesn't, what people are going to need to know in order to get logged on and get comfortable. And I think you know, partners are much more receptive of it. And you know, for some reason, I think one of the downsides is you probably get less questions and less interaction over Zoom more of the time. So you can always get more out of a face-to-face session, but they always take longer because then you've got more interaction. So a 2-hour session becomes a 3-hour session. But what I think we have reached is a point where I know that we can be effective remotely, and we're going out to the right sessions, not just going out as a default when actually all they really want is to be trained on FreeAgent. It's not an implementation. It's you know, just show us how it works. You know, we're comfortable with that. So ups and downs, and I think we've probably arrived at a better place than we were at prior to pandemic in terms of, you know, making the most of you know, our resources and not spreading ourselves thinly.
Yeah, I think it was definitely was. I noticed this. That's why I touched on it, that there was definitely this need to see somebody, and it had to be that way every single time. So I'm not against meeting people, seeing people, but I think it's got to be that balance. But I do think with some of the group sessions, the difficulty I've found is that sometimes you just can't read the room that well. You can't feel that huff or that puff or that sloping of the shoulders, or you know, it's
eye rolling.
Yeah, like, oh God, not this again.
I can hear you rolling your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's some of the things that you miss now, and that is definitely part of it when you're educating or training or whatever it might be. That is some of it. But yeah, there's got to be a hybrid element to that. And I agree with you about the interaction. You don't always get the questions out there on the online platform, but just interesting to see what the difference is. But tell us a bit about FreeAgent. I mean, lots of you will have heard about it. Certainly UK. You know, it's not a new solution, and it's definitely evolved. But give us a bit of a rundown, just in case somebody listens to this who doesn't know, or actually knows the system but doesn't know a bit about the history.
So historically, we were born Ed, Ollie, and Rowan, who were all part of the business up until very recently. And Ed and Ollie have moved on, and Rowan has moved from head of product to CEO, or CPO to CEO. So they were they gave birth to FreeAgent as a product for contractors in the market. So anyone that hasn't interacted with FreeAgent for a number of years or is aware of the name probably associates FreeAgent with being a contractor's product. And that is accurate to the extent that it's excellent for contractors and still is, and always will be. But over the recent years, we've you know, expanded FreeAgent huge amounts. Particularly in the last 3 or 4 years since we were acquired by NatWest about 4 years ago, just before I joined. And what that's meant is that, you know, we now see ourselves very much focused on the micro business. So 0 to 10 employees is, you know, that's kind of where FreeAgent sweet spot is. So if you are, you know, an accountant or a bookkeeper, we probably operate slightly differently. We would consider sort of Xero and QuickBooks to be we don't really consider them to be competitors. We consider them to be complementary products in most practices. we wouldn't go in and say put all of your clients on FreeAgent blanket, because there's probably some that are too big for FreeAgent, right? So when you start to get towards departmental analysis, complicated stock requirements, manufacturing, that kind of stuff, that's not what FreeAgent sweet spot is. FreeAgent sweet spot is a dog walker, a plumber, a 3-person architect firm, professional services, tend to be service-based, but not always, tend to be service-based. That's the real sweet spot for FreeAgent. So we are quite happy in your sort of generalist practice to sit alongside Xero and QuickBooks and let them have the middle market, and that's where they're brilliant, and we don't want to play in that playground. 95% of businesses fit into the FreeAgent sweet spot, and that's very much where we kind of see ourselves. The evolution over the history, so there's been partnerships along the way, the partnership with Barclays, the partnership with Iris, they're listed on the AIM, but the major sort of turning point in FreeAgent's existence was the purchase by NatWest. So we were bought by NatWest about 4 years ago. So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the NatWest Group. We have remained, we've got a really nice balance of independence. So if you go into the FreeAgent office, there's no NatWest branding anywhere. It's free. I feel like I work for FreeAgent, and NatWest is kind of like our rich uncle who helps us out and helps us to take our seat in the market, and where we kind of should have been. And I think it's really starting to drive forward. And I think 3 or 4 years ago when we had this conversation, people were still embedding another bookkeeping solution, and it was kind of like, we see FreeAgent, but we don't see the marginal benefit necessarily of making it a strategic choice. Those conversations are now changed, and that conversation is, we do see it as a strategic choice, and actually, we're starting to push into the top 100, top 200, and there's some really good conversations going on there, and in perhaps what there wasn't before. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and the company is, I think, about doubled in size since I've been there in the last 3 or 4 years. There's about 300 of us in the UK now, so we're actually a lot bigger than people often think they are. Often people think it's sort of more like a 20 or 30 people, but actually there's nearly 300 of us, and we're based in Edinburgh. So
is that the main HQ up in Edinburgh?
Yeah, that's the only office. There's quite a lot of remote, so I'm going up to the office in a couple of weeks for the first time since 2020.
Wow, okay.
And there have been opportunities for me to go up, but just through dumb bad luck of holidays and other meetings and things like that, I've managed to miss all the sales meetings that have missed the lockdowns, and airports being shut and stuff. So yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to going back up and seeing everybody. It's been a very long time.
Nice time of the year as well to go up there, to be honest. It's normally not too bad in the summer. Yeah, great place. So that's a bit about the sort of the evolution, and it's a standard like cloud accounting ledger solution, right? It does the basics of the invoicing. It's got the bank feeds. It's got all of that core stuff, right? But I think what a lot of people are interested in is like some of the, from your perspective, you're engaging with a lot of accountants and bookkeepers who are using the solution. So it'd be good to know from your feedback that you get, like what areas are really ticking the boxes for those firms, and then what's sort of on the the roadmap. I know roadmaps are hard to talk about everything, and software roadmaps never quite go to the duration or the timeline that they should. And you can't always say everything that's on that roadmap as well. So appreciate that. But what are the key features for you that you think are really ticking the boxes, and what's sort of up and coming?
So the key features that we get, the things that make the difference when people start using FreeAgent as opposed to another piece of bookkeeping software, is FreeAgent's built through the lens of simplicity. So everything we do is built to be simple, and there are no compromises or exceptions on that. It is all built to be simple. And what that then leads on to is, so if you're in practice and you've got clients that you want to do stuff on the system, they find it incredibly easy to get to grips with FreeAgent. So what we find again and again and again is that people they'll come to us, they'll adopt FreeAgent, they'll push it out to clients, and they suddenly have this magic moment of the client is doing the things I've asked them to do, and it's making my life easier, and they're getting them right as well. Not always, but much more so than we've perhaps enjoyed with other bookkeeping softwares that perhaps are a little bit more complicated to get your head around. And that is the core of kind of everything that that FreeAgent kind of hangs off, because as we move especially towards MTD, which is like bang in the FreeAgent sweet spot, that increased compliance burden puts an ever greater emphasis on simplicity, because we're going to need to lean on our clients probably more in order to keep costs where they are expecting them to be in a lot of cases. So that simplicity angle is something that is through everything we do. Our NPS score for our end users is best in class. It's in the 70s, 60s, 70s consistently. Depending on what sort of subsection you use, it goes up to the 90s for some of our contractor clients. Our practice NPS is slightly lower, but has I think gone from in the 30s to the 50s or 60s now. So it's just heading in the right direction. And there's been a real reprioritization of accountants as our sort of, our preferred route to market, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing internally is focusing on that. Another thing to pull out, I think, is the FreeAgent mobile app. We get constant good feedback on that, being able to reconsent your bank through the mobile app. We've just put OCR technology into it as well, so you can now snap pictures and that will filter through, which is just part of the product. There's tons of stuff in there. We've got a tax timeline as well, which kind of tells you what your liabilities are as you're going through. And as it all starts to all kind of come together, there's a lot of stuff that's happening with the bank as well. So we have a functionality where you can pay your bills out of FreeAgent without having to kind of leave the app. It's called Pay It, and then we're integrating with some of the tools around making payments as well, into FreeAgent and stuff. So yeah, it's a really exciting time, and there's a couple of big things on the horizon which we'll talk about in a second. But the simplicity and the client engagement piece is really kind of key and core to everything that we do. Great stuff. And yeah, you mentioned like MTD for Itzer and stuff like that. So what is on that? You said it was a sweet spot. Let's have a chat about that upcoming phase that we're all going to be going through. So obviously we've been like kind of foot flat to the floor on it for the last probably 2 years, and then obviously we get the year delay, which in the round, obviously because the way they slightly changed didn't really make a huge amount of difference, did it? Because it just sort of buffered everybody up into one place instead of like kind of staging it through the unexpected, right? It's been formed for moving a year or two, right? I don't think anyone's really expecting that date to be hit. No, exactly right. So we're very much focused on that. At the time of recording, we're just about to release our MTD. It's a MVP. I imagine probably by the time this goes out, it'll already be launched. And then alongside that, we've got a landlord solution as well. So the two main things on our roadmap for the last year. I did hear somebody internally quote 85% of the engineering team and the product team have been working on something to do with MTD Itzer or the landlord solution for the last year or so. So they'll all be quite delighted, I think, when the MVPs are over the line and they're out into the wild, and they can you can have a couple of days to relax and enjoy their release. So yeah, we'll be fully compliant. I've seen the screen flows. It looks really good. The ability to make your quarterly filings and pull your information in and out of FreeAgent through HMRC as that sort of develops. The landlord solution is something that we're really excited about. So obviously there's something in the region of 2.5 million landlords in the UK. 1.3 million of them, if as things stood, were expected to be caught by MTD Itzer. You probably expect that number to come down a bit when people go, oh well, let's just split the ownership and then it will drop below the 10 grand. Let's incorporate, kick the can down the road a little bit, let's sell the property because we were going to sell it in a couple of years anyway. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But we've looked at it and gone, right, okay, so that's a real opportunity, and we're not seeing necessarily other bookkeeping providers in our space really going at it in a sort of standalone way. Mm-hmm. So we sat down and had a look at it and decided that we wanted to build a solution. So there's going to be a kind of new FreeAgent product for what we term internally the accidental landlord. So you're looking at 0 to 5, maybe 0 to 10, but probably 1 to 5 properties is probably where the sweet spot is. If you're going above 5 properties, you're probably you're running a property business rather than an accidental sort of secondary income. So you're going to be able to create your own FreeAgent license with the landlord stuff. You'll be able to create properties in it, assign all the transactions to the different properties. So you'll have a P&L for each property. Okay. Furnished holiday lets, it will cater for. Split ownership, it will cater for, and you'll be able to make all the MTD quarterly filings for those properties as we arrive at that piece as well. So we're really excited about it because it's the first time, probably in a long time, where FreeAgent's really kind of gone to the market with something that isn't something that everybody else is. So my understanding of our competitors is more sort of like, we've got a different chart of account, but it's the same license. You just set it up as a sole trader, a couple of extra reports and a different chart of account, whereas this is a complete, standalone product that's it's really simple. I've seen it kind of in action, and it looks really, really good. So we're really excited to see how the market receives it, and the initial sort of fervor has been kind of excitement about the product, because there's a lot of landlords out there that need to be dealt with over the next couple of years, and and this is a solution. So one thing I'm surprised I've got through this far without saying is that obviously, because we're owned by NatWest, one of the major perks of FreeAgent is that if your client is a NatWest customer, then they can have FreeAgent for free, which is still not that widely known within the market necessarily. In addition to that, the NatWest group has Metal Bank. So Metal Bank is our challenger bank. So if you think Starling, Monzo, Metal, they've now got, I think, 40 or 50,000 customers, which is, last time I checked in, it was about 4. So really, really driving in the right direction. It's digital. It links with FreeAgent. And if you've got a Metal account, which is free to set up and takes maybe 2 hours for a business bank account to set up, you can have FreeAgent for free as well. So, you're really starting to kind of put together a package, no bank fees, no accountancy software fees, and and it works really well as well. So, we're quite excited about it.
It's really, one of the terms you use there is accidental landlord. I actually think there'll be people who don't even know they're a landlord. I actually think it's going to be a bit of a surprise to people. They don't even recognise themselves as a landlord at all, which would be pretty amazing, really, to understand. Oh yeah, actually I am a landlord. Because I think you think, oh, I've got a house that I rent out. I think the term really interesting when you said it. I was like, yeah, I bet the people are not even aware that they're in that bracket at all.
I bet there are a lot of people that are aware they're in that bracket and don't declare it.
You're
my mortgage is more than the rent, so therefore I don't have to declare it. It's a common sort of approach to the situation. It's
interesting.
Yeah, it is, and I would be fascinated to know what HMRC thought the pool of opportunity was for landlords that currently aren't declaring anything, either by kind of deliberately or accidentally,
unknowingly.
They just don't know that it's it's something that they need to do, kind of thing, because it's quite easy to do. Because you buy a house and start renting it out, no one comes to you and says you need to pay taxes. No, there's no letter that comes through the post from the government saying we've been notified that you've bought this house, you need to declare it, as far as I'm aware. So it will be interesting times. It's a good opportunity for accountants as well and bookkeepers to kind of go out and say, this is something we need to do. And I've heard of a couple that have gone around all the local estate agents and said, look, this is an obligation. It's already an obligation, but it's now an increased obligation, and it's becoming digital, so it'll be even harder for people to kind of get away with this. You might want to can we do a presentation to your clients, or like a film a video to send out to your clients, kind of thing. And it seems to be quite a good approach. Yeah, it is a good idea. I thought it was a good idea.
Excellent. So we've touched on MTD for it. So I just want to touch on the ecosystem a little bit, because obviously the theme of this whole podcast is around app advisory and ecosystem. And you also mentioned you got a sweet spot of size of businesses that you deal with, which sort of will take out elements of the wider ecosystem and for the right reasons. But what's your view on the ecosystem? Where do you see yourselves fit in, and what works, what doesn't?
So it's an interesting history. So FreeAgent have gone through cycles of prioritizing integrating. Historically, they didn't really see it as a real kind of route to market in the same way that the competitors did. So inadvertently, this has probably actually ended up being quite an advantage to us now as we sit. So as well as I do, app overwhelm is a major thing in the industry.
Absolutely.
And I've got 1,000 apps to wade through on this this marketplace. How do I go about even doing that? So we integrate with about 50 or 60. Which is much more manageable number. So I'm not saying that there was necessary strategy in arriving at that number over the years, but so we had 2 or 3 good guys that have moved on from the business now, who really made a real dent in in getting us kind of up to where we need to be, really, in terms of the you know, the key players in the markets, you know, your tax and accounting software integrations, you know, your accountancy managers, your Dext, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we integrate with kind of most of the major ones, but there are still some gaps. So particularly onboarding is a gap for us, and reporting is another gap for us. So I, in my role now, with my boss Kev Lord, we're looking at how do we kind of optimize what we've done currently, because our API has improved massively. We had an API team for a while, and they really, you know, fleshed it out and made it a lot easier to deal with FreeAgent's API. We just need to kind of build a slightly better system to allow people to interact with us and to you know, to get what they need to get done simply, and you know, and that kind of thing. So there's some ongoing conversations with apps at the moment about, you know, them integrating with FreeAgent, which is really exciting, and we'll be, you know, perhaps offering some new stuff and, you know, plugging some gaps where we see it. So it's something that's, you might find as a practice, there's maybe a couple of times when you're like, I kind of wish that integration was there. And if that is the case, then just let us know, because it's kind of open season for it. And we're really looking to expand that, but we never really want to expand beyond like the core stuff. We don't ever want to get to 1,000 apps you've got to dedicate, you know, like somebody half a day a week to kind of go through and keep on top of them, because it just, you don't know how to tackle that problem. What we want to do is create a much more curated set of, you know, apps that we can partner with deeper, and that, you know, that our partners can you know, can really kind of get the most from, and you know, and I think as well, owing to the natural size of the FreeAgent client, it doesn't lend itself towards the complicated stock businesses that, you know, you know, your Unleashed and your, you know, those kind of things. That's probably not where we want to go. We're more like the you know, we have an integration with Shopify, and, you know, probably quite like a few more in that area that allowed, you know, more like the gig economy and the side hustle and that sort of thing. Is probably, you know, from a sort of an end user perspective, that's kind of where we'd like to be. So
so it's more of a relevancy essentially to your ecosystem of, this is going to be relevant for the type of core users that we are looking for on our platform. Whereas I think the other marketplaces are much more breadth. You know, you could use, if you grow, you're still going to be using the core system. So that's interesting. It's just good to get a feel as to the, you know, why it would look like it did, and the reasons why. And you know, 50-60 is still not a small amount.
It's not a small number.
No, we're not talking tiny numbers there. So, but yeah, it's I think it makes sense with what that target market looks like. And then in terms of like some firms, and we still know a lot of firms aren't really partnered with any of the digital bookkeeping tools that we have out there. If somebody's listening to this and thinking, you know, FreeAgent sort of something I want to learn a bit more about, like, how do you guys work with accounts and bookkeepers? Obviously, you've mentioned you've put some more effort into and improving that service and that engagement. Like, how does someone get involved, and if they do, what do they get from you? I think it's interesting to know this.
So we've got a team of about 30 or 40 of us in the sort of practice sales team, essentially, who look after varying different sort of parts of the onboarding process. That team the effectiveness of that team has increased tremendously during the time I've been in FreeAgent, because we now have parts of that team that we didn't have before. So we have a really good onboarding team who will take you through the initial kind of getting your dashboard set up, and, you know, just the how do I start interacting with FreeAgent piece. We then have a kind of education journey. So there's a, you know, sort of an initial accreditation, which just kind of gets you really started and gets you to see, like, you know, his invoicing and his banking and that kind of stuff. We then have myself and my colleague Ben, who are, and there's we just had a guy who's on his way out just right now at the moment, actually, and there's our kind of boss as well. So there's 4 of us in the implementation team, and we're looking to hire as well, who work in a deeper fashion. So the more traditional kind of going out 2-3 hours deep dive, let's look at your systems, let's look at how this is going to interact with your apps, and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. That's done on a you know, on a kind of a basis of, you know, if you want to do that, we'll work with you to do that, and we'll work with you in the best way that we can. We don't force it upon anyone. We very commonly get the feedback. So everyone says this, but FreeAgent kind of live it in the sense that we're a partnership organization rather than a sales organization. So it's not common that you'll get somebody ring up from FreeAgent and go, put 100 licenses on, please. I need you to do that.
Okay.
That's not how FreeAgent work at all. It's far more consultative and far more of an ongoing partnership, and we're happy for you to go at the speed that you want to go at, and we'll support you to get where you want to get to and help you to work out what those goals are. And if that's to put 1,000 clients on FreeAgent because you've got a real MTD, it's a problem over the next couple of years, then we're geared up to help you with that, the implementation team and the people in the sales team. If you're a new practice, and you're winning clients and you're putting, some on FreeAgent and some somewhere else because they're bigger and, don't quite suit FreeAgent, we're quite happy with that as well. And, and you'll get the right person and you'll get the right kind of service that, you're not going to have someone ringing you up when you're, 6 months into starting your bookkeeping practice and you've got 14 clients saying, do you want to take 100 licenses here because it'll be cheap and you'll get gold status. It doesn't work like that at FreeAgent. So yeah, they're a great bunch, some really knowledgeable and talented people in the in the account management, business development team and the onboarding team as well. And you'll kind of naturally flow through, and then the implementation team just sort of dip in where it's required. And we work quite closely with the sales team. So if you want to get in touch with anyone from FreeAgent, just jump on the website freeagent.com. If you want to get in touch with me, then just LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. I do have a Twitter account, but I haven't logged into it for about 3 years. so
it's LinkedIn if they want to catch up with you. Well, Tony, we'll call it a day at that. That's been about the bang on time for someone to be listening to this on a dog walk. So I'm sure we've helped some people out on that. But Tony, it's been great to catch up as normal. Two, also to hear a little bit about FreeAgent, because to be fair, I've not heard this podcast is good. I keep an eye on everything, but it's really great to listen and hear and learn firsthand what's going on at some of the different solutions, and it's great to see the product is evolving, because that means the whole profession's evolving if we're getting these solutions and offerings. So Tony, thanks a lot for your time today. You are welcome, mate. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. No problems. So anyone listening, make sure you pick this up on YouTube, the Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the other podcast platforms are on there. If you've got any questions, drop me in at LinkedIn, and I can add them onto some future podcasts. But for today, we'll leave it at that. Cheers again, Tony. Thanks, mate.